The Two Doctors is another one of those Doctor Who stories, made up of a long list of story elements, all stuck together, which might have worked individually, but together add up to a bit of a mess. We've got the return of the Second Doctor and Jamie, location filming in Spain, the return of the Centaurans, and a bunch of guest stars on top of that as well. But there's not nearly enough story to justify the runtime, and what there is rather unpleasant, so this is the weakest story of the season so far. It starts strongly enough, with Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines back as the Second Doctor and Jamie. It feels like decades since their last story together, but it was only 16 years, which is the same kind of gap between David Tennant and Catherine Tate's two runs. Troughton and Hines are still a very entertaining double act, so the first 10 minutes are great fun, whether you remember them from the first time round or not. Unfortunately, there are a number of glaring continuity errors here, with the Second Doctor doing missions for the Time Lords when he's supposed to be on the run from them, and Jamie shouldn't even know who the Time Lords are at all before the War Games. The whole Season 6B theory was developed to account for this, first in Terrance Dicks's novels, and more recently in Big Finish's audio series Beyond War Games, in which the Second Doctor is spirited away after his trial and forced to work with the Time Lords instead of regenerating. The audios are surprisingly good, but it's unlikely that Robert Holmes intended this in the first place, and it's more likely that he just forgot the whole backstory. I don't know how it slipped past Ian Levine, maybe he was on a holiday that week. 3 of the villains are introduced in this section. There are 5 in total, which is way too many. John Stratton as Shockeye is the most memorable. His big orange eyebrows and elaborate costume are more than matched by his performance. His lugubrious voice, expounding on all the culinary delights he wishes to feast on, is an absolute joy. He's not very scary though. I guess young children might be worried about him eating them, but for everyone else, he's just a fine comic turn. We also meet Jacini, played by Jacqueline Pearce. She's basically the same as she was playing Servalan in Blake 7. A cool, calculating, scheming villain. If anything, she underplays her role, but she's still very sinister. Finally, there's Lawrence Payne as Tastari, quite a confusing character, as he flip-flops between being a mad scientist and being the Doctor's best friend. But he does keep his ridiculous sunglasses on throughout. After 10 minutes, we are reminded that Troughton is not the current Doctor, and we're back with Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant in Spain, though in their first scene it's probably meant to be somewhere else. Their relationship has reverted back to tiresome arguing, with the Doctor making endless digs at Perry being American, which may just be down to Robert Holmes' prejudices. The space station where the Second Doctor has landed is taken over by Centaurans, but it all happens off-screen, and we only see the aftermath when the Sixth Doctor arrives. It is quite a striking change to see the formerly bright set all dark and covered in corpses, though it is a shame they had to skip the big battle scene. Maybe they spent all the budget on the location filming. The cliffhanger at the end of part 1 is rather weak, as it's just the Doctor falling through a tangle of cables, and it's even worse when you consider it's the equivalent of the end of part 2 of 6, and the Doctor hasn't actually done anything yet. The middle episode is even less eventful, and you do feel they could have cut the whole story down to regular length without losing anything important. The Sixth Doctor and Perry meet Jamie, who tags along with them for the remainder, and seems to have a bit of a crush on Perry, as he does with most of the female companions, to be fair. In fact, they could have just as easily called the story The Two Companions, as there's more interaction between Jamie and Perry than there is between Troughton and Baker. The Second Doctor is kidnapped and taken to a Spanish villa, where he's basically unconscious for the whole second episode, which seems rather a waste of Troughton's talents. The Centaurans finally make an appearance in Spain, looking nothing like any Centaurans before or since, so much for them being clones. They're really just generic alien soldiers here, and it's about the most forgettable Centaurans appearance yet. Part 3 does at least have slightly more action, as Tastari changes the Second Doctor into an androgyne, and he forms a double act with Shockeye, as they head off to sample the local cuisine, with all of the other characters chasing after them. Patrick Troughton is clearly having a whale of a time matching John Stratton beat for beat, and their scenes together are hugely enjoyable. We also get to see more of the city of Seville, and very nice it looks too. The ending is just as violent as earlier stories in this season, as all the villains take turns killing each other in various gruesome ways. Shockeye stabs an innocent man to death for no reason, and the Sixth Doctor retaliates by poisoning him with cyanide. Almost every single character ends up dead. It's a weird mix of comedy and tragedy that never quite finds the right tone. There is also a strong anti-carnivore theme running throughout, You've got the Sixth Doctor going on about the delights of fishing, Oscar with his moth collection, and Shockeye treating human beings as dumb animals fit only for eating their flesh. At the end, the Doctor declares that he and Perry will be vegetarians from now on, whether she likes it or not, which is just another sign of their dysfunctional relationship. He really shouldn't be forcing her to change her diet without asking her first. The DVD has about 2.5 hours worth of extras, but a lot of that is just recording footage. There's more stuff on the Blu-ray, which I will talk about after I've covered the whole season. A Fix with Sontarans is a sketch from Jim'll Fix It, made to satisfy the wish of schoolboy Gareth Jenkins to be in a Doctor Who story. There is some good interaction between Colin Baker and Janet Fielding, which suggests he would have been much better with a stronger companion. But Gareth Jenkins is about as good as acting as any untrained kid, or Matthew Waterhouse, and Jimmy Savile is of course one of the worst human beings who ever lived. So the unedited version is not a pleasant watch by any standards. Behind the Sofa is a 45-minute celebration of Robert Holmes, with contributions from Barry Letts, Terence Dix, Philip Hinchcliffe and Chris Booker. There's 30 minutes of studio footage, some low-quality clips from the recording of the location footage, and the only story-specific documentary here is Adventures in Time and Spain, in which Gary Downey talks about the problems of finding the locations and filming in Spain, while clearly relishing the chance to be the star of his own documentary. Overall, it's a hard one to rate. Parts of it are very enjoyable, but it's far too long, there's too many villains, and the vegetarian message is hopelessly clunky. I'll give it 4 out of 10. Next week, Time Lash. Pretty sure this is another bad one, but I'll try to keep an open mind. Press subscribe and you'll find out what I think of it now, and I'll see you next time.